Have you ever noticed how a powerful emotion can feel endless, as if it's trapped inside your body or mind, taking over every moment? Whether it's anger that flares up in response to frustration, fear that freezes you in the face of a threat, or sadness that seems to linger endlessly after a loss, our emotions often feel overwhelming and permanent. Yet, emotional neuroscience reveals a surprising and liberating truth. No emotion lasts longer than 90 seconds on its own. This means that the raw emotional energy that arises automatically in response to a stimulus is temporary and natural, and it only lasts longer if we continue to feed it, especially through our thoughts. This fascinating concept was brought to light by neuroscientist Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, whose research and personal experience have made her a global authority on how the emotional brain works. After suffering a stroke and studying the human brain at Harvard, she explains that emotions are biochemical impulses that arise and fade quickly, like waves rolling across the ocean. When an emotion appears, our body immediately responds with a cascade of physical sensations. The heart races, breathing changes, skin may flush or shiver, and an internal storm brews. But this reaction, intense as it is, has a time limit, approximately 90 seconds. It's crucial to understand that the emotion itself is not the problem. What matters is what we do with it. Often, we unconsciously prolong emotions through repetitive thoughts, the stories we tell ourselves about what happened or might happen. This cycle of rumination and mental replay traps the emotion in a loop that makes it feel as if it will never pass. So, while the initial emotion is brief, our mind can turn it into a persistent state that affects our well-being, behavior, and mental health. To visualize this dynamic, imagine an emotion as a wave in the sea. When the wave reaches the shore, it has a distinct strength and movement, but if you watch closely, you'll see that it rises, peaks, and inevitably dissolves. This wave can be powerful and impressive, but it doesn't last forever. However, if you stay in the water, pushing the wave, trying to hold it, or creating more waves, you prolong the feeling of movement and agitation. Similarly, the emotion arises, peaks, and begins to fade. But if you cling to it with persistent thoughts, you create successive waves that keep the emotional discomfort alive. Understanding this reality opens the door to emotional mastery and mindfulness practice. A simple yet powerful technique for managing emotions is to pay close attention to the physical sensations they trigger in your body. Instead of reacting immediately or trying to suppress what you feel, you can observe, almost as a curious witness, the sensations present. A tightness in the chest, tension in the neck, tingling in the hands. This mindful observation, combined with silently counting to 90 seconds, allows the emotion to run its natural course and dissipate without prolongation. This approach doesn't mean ignoring or repressing emotions. Rather, it means recognizing and allowing them to flow healthily, respecting their timing and your body's response. Through this, we can develop a kinder, less reactive relationship with our emotions, creating space for conscious choices and emotional balance. Emotional neuroscience thus offers us a powerful key to understanding that, despite their momentary impact, no emotion is permanent. We have the power to observe, let go, and move forward, living with greater calm and inner control. Disappointment arises from a very specific psychological phenomenon, the gap between expectation and reality. When we anticipate a certain outcome and the actual experience falls short, an emotional reaction naturally follows. But this emotional reaction is not merely triggered by the external event itself. Rather, it is a product of how we interpret that event mentally. This leads us to the concept of cognitive reframing, a powerful psychological tool that can transform our emotional experiences by altering the meaning we assign to events. At its core, cognitive reframing means consciously changing the mental framework through which we view a situation. Instead of perceiving an event as purely negative, reframing encourages us to consider alternative perspectives that can soften emotional distress, promote growth, and open new possibilities. To understand this better, consider how expectations operate. Expectations are mental predictions about what we think will happen. They shape our anticipation and emotional readiness. When reality deviates from these predictions, our minds often generate emotional turbulence, disappointment, frustration, sadness, or anger. However, the key point is that the same event can produce vastly different emotions depending on how it is mentally framed. For example, imagine a person who has applied for a promotion at work. The individual has high hopes and confidence that this promotion will come through. When the promotion is ultimately given to someone else, the immediate reaction is disappointment. The event is the same for everyone who is passed over, but how that person interprets the event will shape the emotional aftermath. One common cognitive trap is catastrophic thinking. This is a style of thinking characterized by imagining the worst possible outcomes and magnifying the negative significance of events. The individual might think, "This means I'm a failure," or "I'll never succeed," or "My career is ruined." This kind of thinking triggers strong negative emotions and can lead to a downward spiral of self-doubt and hopelessness. In contrast, cognitive reframing invites a different mental approach. Instead of rushing to worst-case conclusions, the person consciously chooses to see the event as an opportunity for reflection and growth. They might think, "Not getting the promotion now means I need to develop some new skills," or "This is feedback that can help me improve," or "There will be other opportunities better suited to my strengths." This shift from catastrophic to constructive thinking exemplifies the power of reframing. It is important to clarify that reframing is not about ignoring the disappointment or pretending everything is perfect, nor is it simply positive thinking, in the superficial sense of forcing oneself to be happy or optimistic, regardless of reality. Rather, reframing is a deliberate, mindful choice to interpret an event in a way that is balanced, grounded, and adaptive. The emotional impact of an event is shaped largely by our internal dialogue, how we explain and tell ourselves what happened. The difference between emotional suffering and emotional resilience can hinge on this inner narrative. To illustrate further, think about the internal mental scripts we run when something doesn't go as planned. These scripts are often automatic and habitual. For example, script A, catastrophic. "I failed. I'm not good enough. I'll never get ahead." Script B, reframed. "This was a setback, but setbacks are a natural part of progress. I can learn from this and keep moving forward." The second script creates space for problem solving and hope. It softens emotional pain and builds psychological strength. Neuroscience supports this approach. Our brains are highly plastic, meaning they can change and rewire based on our thoughts and experiences. By consistently practicing reframing, we create new neural pathways that associate challenges with growth instead of defeat. This rewiring can lead to lasting changes in emotional responses and behavior. Returning to the example of missing a promotion, a person who adopts reframing might engage in active problem solving after the event, rather than withdrawing into despair. They might seek feedback, identify skill gaps, or explore new career avenues. The conscious practice of reframing involves several steps. Awareness. Notice your immediate thoughts and emotional reactions. What story are you telling yourself about the event? Examination. Question whether these thoughts are factual or exaggerated. Is there evidence supporting catastrophic conclusions? Exploration. Consider alternative explanations or perspectives that might be more realistic or helpful. Adoption. Choose a mental frame that reduces emotional distress and encourages constructive action. It's a skill that requires practice because our automatic thoughts tend to default to negativity or all-or-nothing thinking. Over time, however, reframing can become an automatic habit, helping us navigate life's challenges with greater emotional balance. In essence, the way we interpret events determines how we feel about them. The same external reality can evoke despair or motivation, depending on our internal framing. This understanding invites us to become more mindful of our mental habits and empowers us to change them, which in turn transforms our emotional experience. Rumination is a common mental trap that many people fall into, an unproductive, repetitive cycle of negative thoughts that can feel impossible to escape. These cycles often revolve around worries, regrets, or obsessive thoughts that play on a loop in the mind, draining emotional energy and preventing forward movement. Understanding what rumination is and learning how to disrupt this cycle is essential for mental clarity and emotional well-being. What is rumination? At its core, rumination is a pattern of repetitive thinking about distressing events, feelings, or problems without reaching any kind of resolution or insight. Unlike constructive problem-solving, which moves toward solutions or acceptance, rumination keeps the mind stuck in a loop of frustration, self-criticism, or anxiety. It often involves replaying the same scenarios over and over, questioning decisions, or worrying about possible negative outcomes. This relentless mental noise can lead to increased stress, depression, and even physical health problems if left unchecked. The problem with rumination is not just the content of the thoughts, but the way the mind fixates on them. This fixation keeps the brain in a state of hyperarousal, where it continuously searches for answers that never come, creating a feeling of helplessness. The more one ruminates, the more trapped and overwhelmed one feels. Imagine your mind as a still body of water. When the water is calm, you can see clearly to the bottom and your reflections are sharp and meaningful. However, when the water becomes turbulent, churned by the relentless beating of waves, the reflections blur, distort, and become difficult to understand. Rumination is much like those restless waves. They stir up mental debris, making it hard to focus or find clarity. Just as water needs direction to flow smoothly, your mind needs guidance to break free from rumination. Without direction, the mind stays agitated, cycling through the same thoughts like a stone caught in a whirlpool. The goal is to gently redirect the flow of your thoughts, allowing the mental waters to settle and clarity to return. The practical technique. The 531 method. One of the most effective ways to break free from rumination is to actively interrupt the cycle through grounded, sensory-based practices. The 531 method is a simple yet powerful technique that helps shift focus away from repetitive thinking by engaging the senses and the body in the present moment. The numbers 5, 3, and 1 refer to steps that anchor your awareness outside of your mental loop. 5. Things you see. Begin by scanning your immediate environment and naming 5 things you can see. This might be a lamp, a book, a tree outside the window, your phone, or a spot on the wall. This visual inventory grounds you in the present, pulling your mind away from abstract thoughts and into concrete reality. Minutes of physical movement with focus. Next, engage in 3 minutes of deliberate physical movement. This could be stretching, walking around the room, or simple exercises like shoulder rolls or arm swings. The key is to focus on how your body feels during these movements, the stretch of your muscles, the rhythm of your breath, the sensation of your feet touching the floor. This re-engages your mind and body connection, fostering mindfulness through movement. Productive action. Finally, complete one productive action. This can be as small as making your bed, washing a dish, replying to an email, or writing a sentence in a journal. The purpose is to create momentum by doing something tangible that leads to a sense of accomplishment. This breaks the passivity often associated with rumination and redirects your mental energy into purposeful activity. Why the 531 method works. The power of the 531 method lies in its simplicity and grounding nature. Rumination is fueled by being trapped in the mind's narrative loop. By involving your senses and body, you interrupt this pattern and invite your brain to reorient itself toward the present. The 5 things you see task shifts your attention from internal mental noise to external stimuli. This sensory input acts like a reset button for your focus. Physical movement stimulates the brain differently than passive thinking, increasing blood flow and releasing neurochemicals that improve mood and cognitive flexibility. Ending with a productive action reinforces agency and control, which are often diminished by rumination. Applying the 531 method. An example: imagine you lie awake in bed, your mind spinning obsessively over a troubling conversation you had earlier in the day. The more you replay it, the more anxious and frustrated you become, making sleep elusive. Here's how the 531 method can help. Things you see. Shift your gaze to your bedroom and silently identify 5 objects around you. A framed photo, a book on the nightstand, the glow of a digital clock, the texture of your blanket, and a shadow on the wall. Minutes of movement. Sit up and gently stretch your arms above your head, roll your shoulders, or walk slowly around the room. Focus intently on each movement, the way your muscles respond and the rhythm of your breathing. Productive action. Make your bed neatly, or write down a single positive thought in a notebook beside your bed. This simple act helps create a sense of control and moves your mind away from stuck patterns. After completing this sequence, you might find your mental waters calmer, your thoughts less turbulent, and your body more relaxed, ready for rest or a fresh perspective. Additional tips to complement breaking rumination: set a worry time. Allocate a specific 10-15 minute window during your day to process difficult thoughts and worries. Outside of this time, gently remind yourself to return to the present moment. Practice mindfulness meditation. Regular mindfulness practices train your brain to observe thoughts without judgment, reducing the tendency to get lost in rumination. Journal. Freely. Writing down worries can externalize your thoughts, giving you space to analyze or release them rather than cycling endlessly. Reach out. Sometimes sharing your concerns with a trusted friend or therapist interrupts the isolation that feeds rumination. Limit triggers. Identify and reduce exposure to people, places, or activities that repeatedly trigger negative thinking loops. One of the most pervasive and often paralyzing misconceptions that plague our social interactions is the belief that everyone around us is constantly observing, judging, and scrutinizing our every move. This psychological phenomenon, known as the spotlight effect, causes us to overestimate the degree to which others notice our mistakes, flaws, or awkward moments. The reality is far less intimidating, and understanding this can bring significant emotional freedom and sharpen our focus on what truly matters. What is the spotlight effect? At its core, the spotlight effect describes how individuals believe that they are in the spotlight of others' attention, especially during moments of embarrassment or failure. We imagine that a tiny slip-up, a stutter in a presentation, a stain on our shirt, a wrong word, becomes the center of everyone's awareness. However, this feeling is a cognitive distortion. In truth, people are much less focused on us than we think. The reason this happens lies in our subjective experience. We live inside our own heads, hyper-aware of our thoughts, feelings, and physical sensations. Our self-consciousness amplifies minor incidents to catastrophic proportions. Because we know what happened and how it made us feel, we mistakenly assume everyone else does too. A landmark study by social psychologists Thomas Gilovich and Kenneth Savitsky at Cornell University illustrates the spotlight effect in a striking way. In this experiment, participants were asked to wear an embarrassingly conspicuous t-shirt, often featuring an unpopular or awkward image or slogan, into a room filled with strangers. The volunteers then estimated how many people would notice the shirt. The results were illuminating. Participants consistently overestimated the number of observers by a wide margin. On average, they believed that nearly half of the people in the room noticed the embarrassing shirt, when in reality only about a quarter had. This disparity reveals the cognitive bias at work. We are so preoccupied with ourselves that we believe others are just as focused on us. This study is a perfect microcosm of everyday social anxiety. Whether it's a typo in an email, a mispronounced word, or an awkward laugh, the spotlight effect leads us to feel that these moments are glaringly obvious to everyone else, when in fact, most people are too absorbed in their own concerns to notice or care. A useful metaphor to understand the spotlight effect is to imagine that everyone is the center of their own universe, where their thoughts, feelings, and concerns form the gravitational pull. Just as you are absorbed in your internal dialogue and worries, so too are others focused on their own lives. This means that despite your fear of being judged or observed, most people are too preoccupied with their own spotlights to pay much attention to yours. This metaphor highlights a profound truth. We are not the main event in other people's mental theater. Our mistakes are often fleeting blips on the radar of others' consciousness, and what feels monumental to us is usually just a minor detail for someone else. Imagine you're giving a presentation at work. You're nervous and I stumble over a few words or forget a key point. In that moment, it feels like everyone in the room has zeroed in on your mistake. You picture their eyes narrowing, their judgment palpable. Yet the reality is quite different. Most people will not recall that specific stumble minutes later, if at all. Their minds are shifting between their own thoughts, the content of your message, and perhaps their plans for after the meeting. Your perceived spotlight is in truth a dim lamp in a vast room of attention. Recognizing this can reduce the stress and self-consciousness that undermine your performance and confidence. When you let go of the illusion that you are being intensely scrutinized, you free up mental space to focus on delivering your message effectively, rather than obsessing over minor imperfections. Understanding the spotlight effect is more than an academic insight. It is a practical tool for emotional liberation. It encourages you to release the heavy burden of imagined judgment and redirect your energy towards what genuinely matters: your goals, growth, and authentic interactions. This shift in perspective can decrease social anxiety, improve self-esteem, and foster resilience. By realizing that others are less concerned with your errors than you believe, you reclaim control over your emotional state. You can approach social situations with greater ease, less fear of embarrassment, and more presence. Moreover, this awareness enables you to prioritize your attention. Instead of obsessing over trivial mistakes or perceived flaws, you can focus on meaningful actions and relationships. The spotlight dims, and you step out from behind the curtain of self-judgment into the light of self-acceptance and purposeful engagement. In the journey of emotional self-regulation, one surprisingly effective technique involves a simple shift in the way we talk to ourselves, specifically the language we use in our internal dialogue. This chapter explores the power of third-person self-talk, a method that encourages you to refer to yourself by your own name, rather than using the traditional first-person pronoun I. Although this might sound unusual at first, science reveals that this linguistic adjustment can profoundly impact your emotional balance and decision-making. Language shapes thought. The words we use to describe our experiences directly influence how we feel and act. When we say, "I am overwhelmed," or "I can't handle this," we are inviting a flood of emotions and potentially trapping ourselves in a negative cycle of self-defeat. This inward conversation typically happens rapidly and unconsciously, yet it holds tremendous power over our moods, resilience, and even our physical health. Researchers from Michigan State University conducted groundbreaking studies that demonstrate how shifting to third-person self-talk fosters emotional distance and enhances self-control. When you replace I with your own name, such as Pedro or Sarah, you create a psychological distance from the situation. This small change encourages your brain to view problems more objectively, reducing emotional intensity and enabling clearer, more rational thinking. At first glance, talking about yourself in the third person might feel awkward, even strange. However, this approach activates the brain's self-distancing mechanisms. By stepping outside of yourself linguistically, you become a more compassionate observer rather than a reactive participant. This perspective shift has multiple benefits. Reduced emotional reactivity. Emotional responses often stem from feeling overwhelmed or too closely attached to our experiences. Third-person self-talk provides a buffer, allowing emotions to settle. Improved problem solving. With emotional intensity dampened, your mind is freer to consider alternative solutions and to think critically. Enhanced self-control. Studies show that individuals using their own name in internal dialogue exhibit greater control over impulses and behaviors, supporting better decision-making under pressure. Increased resilience. Distancing yourself from emotional turmoil fosters resilience, helping you recover more quickly from setbacks. How to practice third-person self-talk. Incorporating this technique into your daily routine is simple. but requires conscious effort until it becomes habitual. Begin by identifying moments of stress, anxiety, or self-doubt. Instead of saying, "I can't do this, I'm so frustrated, I always mess up," try replacing the first-person pronoun with your name. Pedro can handle this. Sarah is feeling frustrated right now, but she will find a way through. John sometimes makes mistakes, but he learns and grows from them. This subtle but powerful reframing invites kindness and patience toward yourself. It also reminds your brain that you are not defined by a moment of struggle. You are a person capable of growth and change. Real-life applications and success stories. Many individuals who have embraced third-person self-talk report a noticeable shift in their mental and emotional landscape. For example, a professional overwhelmed by workplace stress began using her name during moments of anxiety. Instead of spiraling into panic, she found herself able to pause and regain composure, which improved both her performance and overall well-being. Athletes, public speakers, and performers also use this method to manage nerves and pressure, helping them stay calm and focused in high-stakes situations. The practice doesn't eliminate challenges, but it changes your relationship with them, transforming fear into manageable discomfort. Mastering your internal dialogue is one of the most powerful tools you have for emotional regulation and mental clarity. By adopting third-person self-talk, you are essentially stepping into the role of an empathetic observer, guiding yourself with calm, reasoned encouragement rather than harsh judgment or self-criticism. This technique aligns with a broader philosophy of self-compassion and mindful awareness. It acknowledges that while you may experience setbacks and difficult emotions, you are never truly alone. Your inner voice can be your greatest ally. Take the next step. Try third-person self-talk. Today, now that you understand the science and benefits behind third-person self-talk, I challenge you to start using this technique right away. The next time you feel overwhelmed or doubtful, pause and reframe your inner voice by using your own name. Notice how this small shift helps you stay calmer, think more clearly, and make better decisions. This simple practice can transform the way you relate to your emotions and challenges, turning self-criticism into self-compassion and emotional overwhelm into calm control. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more powerful tools and techniques to master your mind and emotions. Your support helps us create more content that can help you live a healthier, happier life. Also, share your experience with third-person self-talk in the comments below. I'd love to hear how it works for you. Stay strong, stay mindful, and remember, you can handle this.